Hi, welcome to Java Coding Assist. In this video, we are going to see what is an API gateway and what are the uses of it and how to create a gateway application. Also, we are going to see how to log the requests that spans across multiple microservices using Sleuth. Let's start with a sample application where we have a set of microservices on the back end and a set of client applications in the front end. The client can be a mobile client application or a single page application or a traditional web application. So whenever a user accesses this client application, the client application just queries one or more microservices, gets back the data, and then present it to the user. It's the client's responsibility to get the data from multiple microservices and then aggregate the result and just give it to the user. So this is how a normal application works. Now what we are going to do is we are just going to create a gateway application which sits between the front-end client applications and the back-end microservices. So this is a gateway application. So this will be the single point of entry to the back-end application. Now the gateway takes the responsibility to get the resources from the one or more microservices and aggregates and gives it back to the client applications. So this client's responsibility is moved from the front end to the API gateway. So all the client applications, it can be a mobile client application or a single page application, it all sends a request to the API gateway, and the API gateway now takes a responsibility to query one or more microservices and it aggregates the data and send it back to the client. Instead of writing this responsibility in each and every client application, you can just move it to the API gateway. The API gateway can also serve some static contents. The static contents can be served from this API gateway. This API gateway is now acting as a reverse proxy, but we can achieve a lot more other than this reverse proxy using this API gateway. In real-time applications, what we do is we run multiple instances of a same service in order to achieve high availability. In that case, this API gateway can act as a load balancer. This API gateway now acts as a load balancer too, sharing the load across the different instances of the microservices. This API gateway is a single point of entry to our application. So what we can do is we can also implement security within this API gateway. Instead of implementing security in all the microservices, what we can do is we can just implement the security here so that all the incoming requests will now be authenticated and authorized by this API gateway. So now only the authenticated user requests will be reaching the microservices at the backend. The API gateway can also serve as a router. That is, it can reroute all the incoming requests to the appropriate microservice based on the information in the URL. The API gateway has a URL service mapping, and based on the incoming URL, it reroutes all the requests to the appropriate service and gets back the data. For example, any request with the user's keyword in the URL will be rerouted to the user service. Similarly, the request to the products service will be identified based on the products keyword, and the request to the utility service will be rerouted to the utility service. We can also implement caching within this API gateway in order to improve the performance and also to be fault tolerant. So this is what an API gateway is. Now let's create an Spring Boot application and see how we can just create an API gateway and how to implement all these functionalities within this API gateway. In this video, we are going to create two microservices, a user service and an utility service, which is going to act as a backend, and we are going to create an API gateway application using Zool. We are going to create a Eureka server for service discovery, and we are going to use Hystrix for circuit breaker. First, let's start by creating the microservices. All the microservices we create must have this Eureka Discovery Client dependency because these microservices will be acting as a Eureka client which registers itself with the Eureka server. The Eureka server now has a registry of all the instances of all the microservices that are up and running. So whenever this client, that is the microservices, wants to call another microservice, it just queries the Eureka server and gets this registry. This registry contains information about all the instances that are up and running at that time. The microservice now picks one of the available instance from the registry and sends its request. This is called as service discovery and it falls under the client-side service discovery because the Eureka client is responsible for getting the registry from the Eureka server and only the client decides which instance to call. So this is called as client-side service discovery. We can add the other dependencies based on our microservice and then import the project into Eclipse. Now we have created two microservices, an user service and an utility service. Both these services are going to have a REST controller to do the REST operations. It will be having the models, repository and service to do all these operations. The utility service will also be having the same thing. We have created two microservices and these two services are going to be Eureka clients. So we have to annotate it as enable Eureka client so that both these microservices will be acting as an Eureka client. That is, these two services will be registering itself with the Eureka server. Next is we have to add some properties in the applications.properties. That is, this Eureka client has to be registered with Eureka. Register with Eureka is set to true and this is to fetch registry. So this Eureka client has to fetch the registry from the Eureka server. This registry contains information about the instances of the different microservices that are up and running. The next is the default zone and that is nothing but the URL of the Eureka server. This is where the Eureka server is hosted and it prefers the IP address. So these properties has to be set for the Eureka client. So now this Eureka client will register itself with the Eureka server and whenever it needs to call another microservice, it just uses this registry from the Eureka server and call another microservice. Next we have to create the Eureka server. Next we have to create the Eureka server application and it has to have this Eureka server dependency so that this application will be acting as an Eureka server. Let's generate the application and import it in Eclipse. So now we have created an Eureka server and this is an Eureka server application. So you have to use this annotation at enable Eureka server so that this application will act as an Eureka server. And in applications.properties file, we have to set some of the properties like register with Eureka must be set to false because this is a server and it doesn't has to be registered with a server again. And we have to set the fetch registry to false because it is not going to fetch any registries from anywhere. Host name is localhost and the default zone is where the Eureka server is running. So now we can run this Eureka server and the two microservices and we can now see how the microservices have registered itself with the Eureka server. Now we have started the Eureka server and the two microservices. All services are running now. So let's go to the Eureka server and see whether microservices have been registered. This is the Eureka server dashboard and here you can see two services, microservices. These two services has registered itself with Eureka and here you can see the number of instances that are currently available. Only one instance of each service is available right now. If we run multiple instances, here you can just see the number of instances that are available at that particular time. We can go back and run one more instances of each service and see how it gets updated in the Eureka server. We can start one more instance by going to the run configurations and within that arguments you can just pass the port. The server.port is equal to 8084. Now we have started one more instance of each service. Let's refresh this Eureka and see. Now you can see two instances are available for each microservice. So this is how the microservices registers itself with the Eureka. We can now see how to call each of these services from one another. That is how to call an user service from an utility service or an utility service from an user service. Here we use the service name to call the microservice instead of actually where it is exactly running. As of now, we have created two microservices under Eureka server. These two microservices are the clients of Eureka server. Now all these services are running. We have started two instances of each microservice. We can check this in the Eureka dashboard. So here you can see you have two instances of user service and two instances of utility service running currently. So you can also see here the ports where it is actually running. Now we can see how to call an microservice from another microservice. We are just going to call the user service to get an user by the user ID. To return this user service has to call the utility service in order to get all the utilities for that particular user. Here we are using a REST template to get the data from the REST API, and in the URL we are just specifying the name of the application, that is the name of the microservice. This is the name which we give in the application.properties, spring.application name. This is the name of the application. The application is registered with the same name into the Eureka server. Instead of specifying the host name here, we just specify the name of the application and followed by the path where the data is available. This is because here we are using Eureka server for service discovery. So whenever there is a request to call another microservice, this Eureka client, it just gets the registry from the Eureka server and it just decides on which instance to call for that request. This client is responsible for deciding on which instance to call, and this is called as client-side load balancing. Here internally Eureka uses Ribbon for client-side load balancing. That is, this service which wants to call another service will just decide on which instance of that service has to be called. The REST template bean which we are auto-wiring here must be annotated with @load balanced. So this indicates that load balancing has to be done and the ribbon within Eureka takes care of the rest. Depending on the load, a different instance of the service will be called each time. We can just run the application and see that. Here we are sending a request to the user service to get an user with user ID 1. We get the user with an user ID 1 and a username Sam. Here you can see we have just got the utilities from the utility server and it is added to the user, and then we get the user back. Here we can go back and check. Here the utility service which is running in port 8084 is being called. Let's resend the request. Let's call the same URL multiple times so that you can just see the load balancing, how the different instances are called for different requests. I'm just sending the request multiple times here. If we go back to Eclipse, we can just check. 4 times the utility service in port 8084 is called, and remaining 3 times the utility service running in port 8081 is called. This is what is called as load balancing. So whenever there is a request to a particular service, the load is shared across multiple instances. And this is an example for client-side load balancing, where the client is responsible for deciding on which instance to call. So to call another microservice, we are using a REST template and we are using the exchange method here. And here we are just giving the URL of the service, and then it's a get method. And we are using the HTTP headers. If you want to pass in any headers, you can just create a HTTP entity and then you are just specifying here the return type of the data. I'm just going to get an utility array. You're just converting this utility array into a set and I'm just adding it to the user entity and then returning the user. So this is how we call one microservice from another microservice. Now we have created the microservice and we have included the service discovery also using Eureka. The next step is to create an API gateway. We are going to use Zool to create the API gateway application. Now we are going to create the API gateway application. For that we are going to use Zool. So we have to include that Zool dependency here, and this API gateway is also a client for the Eureka server. So this API gateway will be identified by each client using this Eureka service discovery. So we have to include that discovery client dependency too here. We can now generate the application and import it in Eclipse. We have imported the application into Eclipse. This is going to be the Zool proxy server. So we have to include this annotation at enable Zool proxy so that this application will be acting as a API gateway. And in order to be the Eureka client, we have to use the annotation at enable Eureka client. So whenever this service wants to call another microservice, it just gets the registry from the Eureka and makes a call to the microservice. We have created this backend now, that is we have our services and we have the Eureka server too. Now we have created an application to serve as a API gateway. The next step is to include all these functionalities into this API gateway. First, we can see how to introduce routing into our API gateway. All the incoming requests has to get through this API gateway to reach the backend microservices. So what we do here is we just create a path and a service mapping so that for each incoming request, the appropriate service will be identified by using the path information, and the request will be forwarded to that corresponding microservice. Let's go back to the application and see how to create this route mapping. We can create the mapping in application.properties file. Before that, we can see some of the properties that has to be set in applications.properties. The first one is the application name, and the second one is the port, and these are specific to Eureka client. We have to register with the Eureka, so it is set to true, and needs to fetch the registry, so this is set to true, and this is the URL for the Eureka server, and we are preferring the IP address. Now this API gateway is also a client for the Eureka server. Whenever it needs to call an microservice, it just fetches the registry from the Eureka server and then uses that information to call the microservice. Next, we have to configure the routes for routing. Here first we specify the path, we give the path and the corresponding service ID. For each service, we have to specify the path and the service ID. This is the name of the service dot path. You have to specify the path here, and service name dot service ID. This is the name of the service. This is how it will be registered in the Eureka. So whenever it gets a request to this path, which contains user service in its path, it will be mapped to this user service. This is used to remove any prefixes that you use in the path. Likewise, we can create the mapping for the remaining services. So whenever a request comes in, based on the path, the corresponding microservice will be identified and the request will be forwarded to that microservice. So this is how routing takes place in an API gateway. Now we can run the application and see how routing takes place in this gateway. Now let's run the application and see how this Zool API gateway acts as a router. We have started all the services, that is the Eureka server, the user service, utility service and Zool API gateway service. You can see the services running in this Eureka dashboard. Here 2 instances of user service, 2 instances of utility service and 1 instance of Zool services running. So now this Zool service is the API gateway and it is a single point of entry to our backend services. We should send our request to the Zool service only. Zool service is now running in port 8083. So here we have to send the request to this Zool service which is running in port 8083 followed by the path. As the request reaches this Zool service, this API gateway takes the path information and find the corresponding microservice. Here you can see for the path that contains user service keyword, it identifies this as a service. So now based on this path service mapping, the request will be forwarded to the corresponding microservice. And in the user service, we are retrieving an user by the user ID. So the request reach here, and here what we are doing is we are just calling one more service, that is the utility service. We are just calling this utility service to get the utilities, and we are setting it to that user and just returning that user. Now let's send the request and see whether we get the desired response. Yeah, here we get it. Our request is to get a user by the user ID from the user service, and we got that output. We just got the user with an user ID 1, and here you can see in the consumed utilities, this service called the utility service for the utilities, and just it is added to the user and the user is returned. So this is how routing takes place in an API gateway. We can now see how this API gateway acts as a load balancer. You can see here multiple instances of the microservices are running. So whenever the request comes in, the load will be shared across these instances, and this is done by the Zool API gateway. Zool internally uses Ribbon to load balance the incoming requests. We can now see how it is load balancing the coming requests. Let's resend this request multiple times and see how the different instances are called each time. I have sent multiple requests. So now we can go back to the console and see how the instances are called. Here you can see the user service running in port 8081 is called 4 times, and the user service running in port 8082 is called 4 times. That is, the load is shared across these two instances. Similarly, for utility service, the utility service running in port 8084 is called 4 times, and the utility service running in port 8085 is called 4 times. So the load is shared across the multiple instances of the same service. So now Zool acts as both a router and a load balancer too. In the next video, we can see how we can implement security into this API gateway and how we can authenticate and authorize the incoming request to access the microservices. Thanks for watching. Bye.